first government job would have been around 1994, Central Intelligence Agency. Was recruited out of Southern California. I worked in a national clandestine, today it was called National Clandestine Service. Back then it was called Director of Operations, so I was pretty kind of on the cloak and dagger side of the house. Spent a lot of times working overseas in the counterintelligence field. I learned one of the biggest things I learned was about people, what drives people, what motivates people, and also how the world is really not as it seems in the paper from a media perspective. But one of the other things I learned about there was about dedication. One of the things I learned in the intel community in general is that the people that work in the intel community extremely dedicated. I learned about how to be more dedicated in that role, in that job, and just what the world was like. I got to travel, go to a lot of different countries at a very young age, meet a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, and it just expanded my mind and I think my personality from that job. So it was a great job, fantastic. I loved it. Probably when I was around 13 or 14, I already started kind of constructing a plan on what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, what I wanted to be in life. And I had a couple of different pathways of career choices. And one of those pathways was, the intel side of the world. I didn't really know what that meant back then, but I knew I wanted to do something in that vein around intelligence work, and never really knew what that meant. But I figured if I ever was going to get into that line of business, that you probably couldn't get in trouble. You probably couldn't have some weird thing in your background. And even like I said, at 13 or 14, I kind of knew this. So I always stayed on the straight and narrow. But having a plan was the biggest thing. I always had this plan that I would write down and kept in the back of my mind on things that I needed to get, skill sets I thought I may need to have. Which led me to join the Marine Corps Reserves because I wanted to get a certain skill set. And actually the Marine Corps Reserve is where I picked up counterintelligence work and went on from there. So having a plan was one, and the other part of it was actually executing against that plan, which is something I try to mentor to people all the time, especially people coming up in their careers. Have a plan and execute against it. Don't get discouraged. There's plenty of frustration and discouragement out there for everybody, but don't get discouraged. Keep focus on the mission of the organization. Understand what that mission is. Always think about that you're doing something that's much larger than yourself, that's greater than yourself. I've got 2 girls. I've tried to push them into public service. They kind of want to do their own thing still, but I think there really is, for a younger person that's coming up and as are public servants, I don't think there's a greater thing that you can do. Even if it's whether it's military or whether it's public service, there's not a greater thing that I don't think you can do, even if you just do it for a shorter amount of time. So again, don't get discouraged. Always think about this. It's much bigger than you are, and enjoy the mission, and you're there to support the mission. When you find yourself getting frustrated, you take a step back, take a break. Don't forget about those very basic things when we talk about like family, work-life balance. It's very easy to get caught up in work. Have an outlet, hobbies, things like that, that can kind of keep your mind clear. And as best as you can, leave your job at the office when you leave for the day. As best you can, leave it there, pick it back up in the morning when you get back in. I would have to say, as a gentleman I worked with, a number of years ago, and one of the things that he told me was he was always talking about recasting yourself. He said, he says about every 3 or 4 years you should be reinventing yourself. He says whether that's picking up a new skill set, learning something new, something that you can transport to another job. I remember we were driving down 66. We're coming from DC, where I was a consultant. We're coming down DC. We're sitting in a car. And he points at a row of buildings along 66, and he says, you can get to a point in your life where you can walk into any one of those buildings and run that business without even knowing what it is. So that was the best. So that always drives me to constantly kind of as I said earlier, recast myself, always pick up new skills, don't get stale, stay fresh, stay on top of things, and kind of look at, don't stay in a box. Look at other things, other opportunities. Don't limit yourself. It's kind of what he told me. Best career advice I've ever had. It's all about whatever tools that you have in your tool belt that helps you build personal relationships with people. And also those business relationships, creating a network of people. Those are some of the best resources I ever found to have. The more people you have in your network, whether it's a personal network or whether it's business relationships, the better off you are. My attitude is, if you have a good network of people, solid folks in your network, you'll never be unemployed. You'll kind of never really be unhappy. There's always somebody out there that you can kind of lean on and help you out. And whatever those resources may be, maybe they're online resources, maybe there's something that folks have established between themselves and another individual. But whatever those resources may be, use them to their full advantage. Keep building the network, keep building it. As I always say, the bigger the net that you cast out there, the more fish you'll catch. So always keep working on that network and expanding it as much as you can. It's worked tremendously for me, and I picked that up from other folks, learning that they just have like this extensive network that they're always working on and keeping good relationships and keeping in touch with people. Experience. The government and the military, which I've been in both, I'll take it back a little bit. So when I was in consulting, I left the CIA and went to consulting, and did consulting for about 8 years. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time. But I wanted to get more experience. I wanted to move up the food chain. And whether that was in private industry or whether it was going to be in the government, to be able to move up from where I was, I had to do things like manage bigger budgets, manage people, and things like that. You get that right away in the government, regardless really of where you're at. At some point, early in your career, especially if you're good, you're going to end up managing people. You're going to end up managing other resources like funds and things like that, which is some of the, I think, the best experience that you can get. The government and the military gives you that right off. You get a lot of leadership experience, particularly in the military, right off the bat. You get all that leadership experience. And in the government, you'll pick that up as well, especially as you start to manage organizations, manage more people, start getting these hundreds of thousands to multi-million-dollar budgets. And then you can take those skills, and if you wanted to go back into private industry, you'll find that you can go back into private industry, and that experience is transportable. You can transport it right back, and you can come in doing bigger things, whether it's VP of companies, CEOs, and things like that. So I really focus on looking to get a lot of experience coming to the government early on that you can use, whether you stay in your career in the government or whether you're like me, you come in and out. But every time I've done that, I've come back at higher and higher levels, whether it was in government or whether it was private industry, and that's all based on that experience in the government.